friends, it's Grace, and today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up 2022. So in January I finished 5 books, and right now my reading is sort of skewing from month to month because there are 2 books that I started in December and finished in January, and there are also a few books that I was reading in January that didn't finish. So they didn't get counted towards January because I always count books in the month that I finish them. So 5 books is, I guess it's representative since there were 2 that were from December and then 2 that carried over into February. Like, I don't know exactly how to wrap my brain around that, but it feels like I read more, but at the same time, like, a few of the 5 books were pretty long and a few of them were short. I don't know. The other thing is that Ben was here in January, and with me like still working for the most part full time, like I did take a few days off to spend together with him. I don't get as much reading done because of course like when I'm at home, I'm going to prioritize spending time with Ben rather than like ignoring each other and reading, which we obviously do read together. But it's just, I think, harder for me because if I know that he's here for a limited amount of time, I would rather focus my attention on that. All that is to say, it was still a pretty high quality month of reading with these 5 books that I finished in January. So let's just get into like the brief stats and then I will get into the actual books. So I actually started using the story graph this year, and I thought that it would be like a good transition period just because I went back and backdated, like updated the books that I've read from last year with ratings and stuff, but I just thought that a new year is a great place to start with that and move forward. So usually I just do full star ratings and half star ratings, but because the story graph provides you with that ability to do like the full range of quarter star ratings and everything, I'm going to go with my ratings from the story graph instead of like whatever I put on Goodreads, because obviously it's kind of frustrating that they only offer you whole stars. Out of the 5 books that I read, my average rating was a 4.4 because I had 2 5 stars, 2 4.25 stars, and 1 3.5 star. And so out of those, once again, 5 books that I read, 2 of them are like modern fantasy. Another one would be considered fantasy for sure, but I would more consider it a classic. And then there is 1 more classic, so 2, and then one of them was just like literary fiction. Now I'm gonna do what I usually do, which is go lowest to highest rated, and the lowest rated at a 3.5, so not even a negative rating really, was Beowulf by Unknown and translated by Seamus Heaney. That is the translation that I chose to read that I got on Kindle, and so I have a video actually dedicated to this because this was Philip Chase's pick for me in the month of January for my series where I am reading booktubers' recommendations of some of their favorite books. And so this was a tough one for me to rate. I say that about a lot of classics. I do have trouble more with rating them because there was a lot of value in like me trying to vlog this and try and look deeper into it, and I also found so much value in Philip's comments, and I think that if you were to study Beowulf there would really be so much to it. And I also said that I think I would enjoy it more upon reread. But the reality is that Beowulf is epic poetry. It does move fast. It's not modern in the sense of like character focused, and it is very much like something in the vein of the Iliad or the Odyssey, because of course they are in the same general form, but it's also that like it does move very fast. You don't necessarily have time to stop and sink into it unless you purposefully and mindfully like do that yourself. So I think that it could be, like I said, more beneficial on a reread because the first time I kind of blew through it, and so it just like I don't know, it left an impression on me that was an equivalent of a 3.5. It's hard for me to rate classics because I'm not saying that the value of Beowulf overall is a 3.5 out of 5. It's more of like a pure enjoyment rating, and then it's sometimes hard to equate the two of those. So that's kind of the best way that I can put it. I did enjoy reading it though, and if you are interested, I would absolutely encourage you to go watch the video that I posted dedicated to Beowulf and to including Philip's thoughts, and it was a really fun video to make, so go check that out. Okay, next up we have the two 4.25 star rating books, and it's interesting because sometimes I know that I will give ratings relative to one another within a series. Like, if I think that a book is really, really good, but I know that I like the next books more, then I won't give it a full 5 stars. And I know that everyone will feel differently about that because you would think, well, if this book is still better compared to most other books that you read, it could still be 5 stars. But I just can't, like, in my own mind do that when I know that the quality is going to go up within the same series. So all of that is basically to say I gave a Game of Thrones 4.25 stars. I probably could have given this 4.5 stars. I don't know, it's hard because I do love this book, but as I was just saying, A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords were my favorites on my first read, and I think that I might be giving those consecutively higher ratings, so I'm gonna chill for now. I could go back and change my rating on this, but I love A Game of Thrones. I don't think anybody really needs me to pitch it in terms of it being one of the most popular fantasy books ever when you consider the TV show and the wide-reaching fame of this series, but it's just so rich. Like, whether you're considering the plot threads, the politics, the characters, the religion, the history, the lore, like, pretty much everything about this book and this series is just really, really rich.
Nice.
And I love sinking into it and learning about it in a very organic way while the plot is progressing and while the characters are doing their things. And I just love that there are so many complex characters that you have them fully ranging from like the honorable and good to the very flawed people with good intentions to like the bad people and the straight up like monstrous people. And so he does a great job of having that spectrum, and there's just so much to be interested in. And obviously I know that I love this already because this is my 3rd time reading it, but it bears repeating, so that's that.
On all levels except physical, I am a wolf.
Then the second book that I gave 4.25 stars to is the second classic that I read, and so that is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I don't know if it's one of my favorite classics or not, but in terms of the like character growth and like the joy in life that's kind of expressed through this is something that I really, really enjoyed. So essentially this novel is about the main character, Janie, who when she's a child, she lives on a plantation, and then when she gets older, her mother is not actually around, and her grandmother's basically sole goal for her is to secure her a good and decent match of a man that will be able to support her so that she can have some like financial security and home security and not have to live her life the way that her grandmother had to live her life. This is obviously a very like good intention and like a noble intention, but ultimately this book is about Janie breaking away from what has been chosen for her and trying to set out and explore the world and live her life and try and make her own way, which is very difficult for a Black woman to do, even among Black communities in the 1930s. And I just really loved like I don't know, it's really an exploration of her finding herself and growing into her personality, discovering who she is, discovering that like love and other people can either hold you down or help you flourish depending on the health of like your friendships and relationships. And there are definitely some hardships in here, but I think overall the tone of the book is relatively hopeful, and I just really enjoyed a lot of what this was doing. I also thought that like the dialect that was being written in here was like in terms of ease of reading, like I didn't have very much trouble reading it, which was nice because it was very phonetic, but I also felt like the use of like a certain speech pattern was also lending the book like an atmospheric quality where you really felt like you were there in that community. So that was a plus as well. And yeah, I just thought that this was really, really nice and a really well-written classic, and I'm glad that it's kind of well recognized, I guess, because based on the foreword and the afterword in this book, Zora Neale Hurston kind of experienced a period of decades where her works were going kind of unacknowledged, and then they experienced a resurgence. So I think I'm just glad that this book did come back around and get recognized again. Then we have my 2 5-star reads for the month of January, one of which is fantasy and one of which is literary fiction. So I will talk about the fantasy first. I don't remember whether I've publicly spoken about this yet, but it's probably not super surprising if you've watched my channel a lot, and that is The Liar's Knot by M.A. Carrick. So I adored the first book in this series, The Mask of Mirrors. I read it, I think last April or May, maybe even June. But it's been a decent amount of time between the first and the second. However, I knew I loved the first one, and my sole reason for being hesitant to pick up the second one is that the third book is not expected until this August. And so having read it this month, or last month, that's not a huge amount of time to wait now. Had I picked it up immediately after finishing the first one though, it would have been more than a year. So that's why I was a little hesitant. Not because I didn't think I was gonna like this. And as I expected, I loved it. It's a bit of a tricky series to recommend, honestly, because while I think that the quality is top-notch, I also think that this is not like a beginner fantasy series whatsoever. And if you're an experienced fantasy reader, I would definitely recommend it. If you like a heist story, definitely recommend. If you like a complex magic system and you don't mind being a little bit confused, is kind of the crux. Like, if you're somebody who doesn't mind that, you'll probably like this. And that's kind of the key point, because it's not that I think that this is above what someone could read and understand, not as though I'm saying that I can understand it better than other people. It's that there is a purposeful leaving out of some information. Like, the pieces on the board and the pieces of the puzzle are slowly revealed to you, and you kind of have to be okay with not having all of the information, and when something is revealed to you is sort of most likely when it's going to be relevant, and then you'll have to kind of put the pieces together yourself. And if you're not someone that likes to have to hold a bunch of information in your head, then that's fine, because I know that some people don't want to have to do a lot of work or put in a lot of effort while they're reading something, and I totally get that, but I think that it's really worth it for this. I'm really excited for the finale of this series because everything has just come together so beautifully in each climax so far, where things have been building to the point where it's a perfect balance of plot and characters. They are really, really intertwined, where the plot is dependent on who our characters are. And I think that that's really important. And I'm trying to be vague because this is the second book in a series, of course, but I just, I don't know, there's so much happening, and The pacing is kind of questionable because there's so much happening all the time. It's pretty fast-paced, but the things that are happening aren't necessarily important until the climax at the end. So, I don't know, I guess it's just medium to fast-paced, but you've still got to pay attention. I gotta be honest, I don't feel like I'm making any sense at all, so I'm just gonna wrap it up. I'm just gonna say that this series has great characters, it has great politics, family dynamics, etc., and great magic and great plot. So just read it. And then the final book of the month that I rated 5 stars, that is literary fiction, is one that I don't actually have with me because it's actually a book that my mom bought for Ben for Christmas, and I read it and then he took it home with him. So that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, and this was, of course, a very popular read for a lot of people in 2022. It was for sure on the Goodreads Choice Awards. I loved the cover of this book, but to be honest, at first I didn't think it sounded that interesting because it's about like video game development, but the thing is that while it is about those things, it's not really. Like, the actual story is about the characters and it's just about like a few really flawed human people. Like, I don't think you fully understand what I mean until you read the book, but the book is just very human. And I think that the reason for that is because not only do you have people making mistakes and people being like jealous and petty and rude while also being good to one another and loving and caring, you also have like this very interesting pacing where it doesn't necessarily hit classic story beats. The story kind of unfolds the way that it would in real life. There's definitely like an emotional depth to the characters and their relationships, and this book spans about 25 years of our two main characters, Sam and Sadie's lives, and they've known each other since they were like about 11 or 12, and they reconnect in university. They are both extremely smart humans. They decide to make games together, and this just explores like their relationship, their personal and professional relationships. You have other characters that are added in because of course like they have other people in their lives. They work well together and they fight and they reconcile and they have a really, really deep friendship, but it's almost like a sibling relationship sometimes where there's love there, but they can also be really mean to each other sometimes. The book just ended up hitting me really, really hard. It also had this like feeling of nostalgia just based on the time period that we were dealing with. This like late 90s, early 2000s time period where like I was a young child. Like, it's not as though I remember these things as even remotely an adult, like not even like a preteen. There's just something about that time period that like evokes something, but it was a very, very nice feeling while reading the book. And it was also this feeling of really, really good emotional impact for me. Like I said, the book just ended up hitting me really hard, and for that reason, I think it's going to be very, very memorable. I know it's early, but I could see it being one of my favorites of the year. We'll just have to see how it unfolds and how memorable it actually does end up being after a long period of time. I really loved it, and I'm just glad that I ended up having the opportunity to read it because I don't think it's something that I would have bought on my own. And I'm really, really happy about that. So that was the last of the books that I read in the month of January. Like I said, it was a really good reading month. I feel like I say that every month, but like, let's be real. I pick up things that I think I'm gonna like, and at least 85% of the time I do end up really liking them. So I guess I'm fortunate in the fact that I have not yet run out of books that I'm excited for. So with that said, a 4.4 average rating is pretty solid. And I hope that you enjoyed this video and enjoyed hearing me talk about these 5 books. So that is going to be it for this one. Please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I post new videos on most Mondays and Thursdays. And as always, I will have my socials and joint Discord with Ben linked in the description if you're interested in any of that stuff. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!